Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mego Museum's Mint Off Card. Really pumped to be doing this episode. A couple weeks ago, I got a wonderful surprise package from my good friend Jason at White Elephant Toyz, and it included some samples from their first wave of Super Joe Unlimited figures, and a special unique White Elephant Toyz figure as well that I'll go into that is right up my alley. This is going to be an unusual episode of Mint Off Card because I'm going to delve into the history and the importance of this Super Joe Unlimited line. So let's get into it right now. The original Super Joe toy line was created by Hasbro, and it is actually the follow-up to G.I. Joe, the first action figure ever made. In 1976, after 13 years of producing G.I. Joe, Hasbro decided to throw in the towel on the 12-inch format. It had really run its course, and competitors like Mego and Mattel were making smaller action figures and selling more of them. So the decision was to reduce G.I. Joe's size and also to change the setting. No longer was Joe a military man or an adventurer. He was now part of some sort of outer space police or ranger force, patrolling the galaxy alongside his cyborg friends and keeping everyone safe from the very slithery Gore, the king of the Terrans. Some of the early work here was done by Nick Cardy of DC Comics fame. For this line, Hasbro chose to drop the GI in Joe's name and call him Super Joe. They didn't feel that was going to carry over. The new figures were 8.5 inches tall, so shorter than Big Jim, but taller than Amigo. Many of the human characters had a Battle-matic type action on the back. I believe it was called the 1-2 punch, and it's very similar to, toys like Big Jim, where you press his back. This one, it would move his fists up and down. The other gimmick used in Super Joe were small flashlights installed either in the figure themselves or on a harness so you could fight by night with light using a small penlight battery. Hasbro put a lot of effort into Super Joe. It was a well-made toy line. It had lots of tooling, and it had a pretty good 1977. Kids seemed to dig it because they were looking for science fiction toys in 77, and there wasn't any Star Wars stuff. So yeah, we got a lot of this under the tree that year. However, by the following year, real Star Wars toys were available. Hasbro had something of a disaster with the production of the Terran figure, which was supposed to be the big Christmas item. From what I understand, it broke a lot. It broke a lot before it even got out of the factory. In 1978, Super Joe was canceled, which effectively ended the 15-year run of the world's first action figure, G.I. Joe. And if you look into books about G.I. Joe or videos, Super Joe is just kind of mentioned. It's a bit of a footnote. I honestly equate it to being the middle child of the G.I. Joe range. It's got the very successful 12-inch brother and the even more successful 3 3/4-inch brother, but nobody really talks about Super Joe. And it is underrated in the collectible field, and I will explain that after we review the figures. This lack of attention to Super Joe is one of the things that inspired me to do a multi-series article in Toy Ventures magazine written by Steve Stovall, who is one of the producers of Super Joe Unlimited and, in my opinion, the most knowledgeable Super Joe fan I've ever met. So let's do a silly Super Joe montage. I'll have a little fun with these guys. Then after that, we'll take a long look at the figure, the body, the accessories, and I'll reveal the bonus figure that Jason sent over that you can buy right now. Hang tight. So, how does the new Super Joe body compare to the original? Oh, oh god. Yikes. Yeah, this is one of the few occasions where I can honestly say it's better than the original. And I'll give you my reasoning for that. The reason Super Joe is not as well collected as it should be is because there's a major barrier to entry in this collection. These bodies fell apart. Hasbro used rubber to secure the joints together, and that rubber disintegrated. The hands were also made of rubber, so they're usually handless. This just crumbles and decays. These were not meant to survive. And in fact, I've had Super Joes since the 90s that have disintegrated. The last time I held a Super Joe that actually still had his original joints was probably like 1995. So what you've got on the collectibles markets is tons of heads, outfits, low-cost accessories, spaceships, all kind of like undervalued because people don't know. It's essentially a vintage toy line without figures. Sure, there's diehards who actually fix the figures or use different bodies, and that's great. But those are the truly passionate, and this line provides a gateway to collecting Super Joe once again. You can actually take the vintage heads and put them on these bodies. So this really opens a lot of doors, and I predict that those Super Joe lots of parts and heads will now start going for more money. And that's amazing because I love Super Joe and I own a few carded figures, but now I can actually make loose action figures, which just blows my mind. One of the things I really like is also the accessories. The guys have really gone out of their way to add some new flavor to the line. They couldn't bring everything back. You know, the 1-2 punch would be expensive. I also don't think the lighted vests would be a really cost-effective measure to reproduce. But they've added things like helmets, guns, which were desperately needed in the original line, and some really cool space armor. It's a really nice imaginative offering that looks like it belongs, but has no history with the line at all. The guys are also adding new characters like this Atomic Mike. He was not part of the original Super Joe team and is definitely an homage to Mike Power, the Atomic Man, but with some nice subtle changes to make him more futuristic looking. This is the kind of fun these guys are having with this line, and of course there is an Atomic Mike and Mummy playset they've put together that's just brilliant. I love it. It's nice that these guys are clearly having fun with this and that people are reacting to it so well. I've talked to them and they've told me that this is sold beyond their expectations. So they were right. They were onto something, and they've unlocked, a new collector field for everybody with this because my goodness, if you're going to collect a figure line, it better have a figure. In terms of quality, I think these guys have done really well, especially when you consider this is like the first wave of stuff coming out of the factory. For the most part, it's really fantastic. I mean, the boots especially are of higher quality than the originals. The only issues I really had with all of this is the belts were kind of a real thick, stiff, good quality plastic, but I didn't even have to heat those up. I just had to kind of play with it a little bit, bend it, and conform to the shape, and then it went on like butter. The only other thing I really noticed about the line was the cut of the jumpsuit needs to be altered a little bit. I believe that they were using probably a vintage jumpsuit as a base, and it needs to be shorn up for this new body, which I am positive they will fix. So the big surprise in this box was the Atomic Apemen Dr. Zorma that White Elephant Toyz has put together, and this is the glow-in-the-dark edition. This is really channeling some knockoff vibes, and it's right up my alley, is that it is sort of like a marriage of the AHI Action Ape Man with the Astro Apes, which were a really ridiculous series of knockoff figures. And I really love the attention to detail here. He even included glasses so that you can really get that classic Dr. Zorma look. Jason developed a fun backstory for these guys that I got to advise a little bit on. And all in all, I really appreciate the sensibilities of this toy. every monster figure he's come out with has 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future, and that's really fun to see when you get these original creations you wish you had as a kid or you swore you saw as a kid. So I really want to applaud the Atomic Apemen. There's a couple of different variations available on his site. And as well, there is a Jolanta 2-pack available as an exclusive for the Jolanta show, and you don't have to attend to buy the 2-pack. So right now with Super Joe, you can buy the parts and figures and accessories over at White Elephant Toyz site. I know that Steve is touring toy shows with it as well. Also, Cotswold Collectibles will also have their own exclusive line of boxed figures and accessories that are coming down the pipeline. As well, I know for a fact that there will be a 12-inch equivalent of Super Joe as well. I mean, they're really checking all the boxes here. So, folks, let me ask you a question. Are you interested in Super Joe now that he has a body, or is it something you still don't want to dip your toe into? Let me know in the comments below, or you can hit me up in our Facebook group, Megomania, or at the forums at megomuseum.com. That's it for me this week. If you like what you see here, please consider hitting like and subscribe. I do this every week. If you're not new to this, please consider sharing it and liking it. It really helps me out. Thanks for watching. I'll be back Saturday with another vintage Mego video. Until that time, be well and buy what you like. Cheers.